Okay, today we have a special guest, João Fernandes, founder and CEO of DocDigitizer. Welcome, João. It's a great pleasure to have you here, and many thanks to having the time for this interview.
Thanks, Ricardo. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, me too. Okay, this interview is based on a program that Nova has, and Nova Science and Technology has been from the last years developing an entrepreneurship program, and for all the graduate and master students called Empreendedorismo. And for this 2023 edition, we have near 1,000 students
Whoa.
that are already on board, which means it's a great record and a great pleasure for being part of this. And many thanks once again for having you here. Yes, indeed, what we wish is to listen from you, your work life journey. And let's start with the first question for you. And my first question is, can you tell us about your background and how you became an entrepreneur?
Sure. It's always hard to get to the roots of what made me embark on that journey. But my background, I'm a computer engineer from Técnico. So as you can imagine, I spent my early career developing software as a software developer. And one of my main interest by my fourth year was human computer interaction, which is like a field that studies the way humans interact with technology. And I think that shaped a lot my vision about technology, because most of my colleagues were developing software just for the pleasure of developing software. Um, and I was basically studying how people interacted with the software. So people always play a huge role when I was studying technology. And I think that drove me to try to understand how technology can be useful, not for the sake of developing very nice code or algorithms or amazing AI, but also how technology could really impact people, which I think was something that was not that common at that time when looking at my colleagues. So I started to do some research on INESC, and doing some big European projects around human computer interaction. That I think opened a lot my perspectives on cutting edge technologies that were very experimental at that time, and now they are, I think, a commodity, like things such as, I don't know, augmented reality,
Yeah.
virtual reality, even metaverse, and those kinds of concepts. So I was studying them a couple of years ago. Um, but I would say that that was not the trigger to become an entrepreneur. That just opened my eyes for this reality of people using software and software products, not only the technology. But I think what drove me to become an entrepreneur was mostly the role model that I had back in home, which was my father. So my father was, throughout his life, an entrepreneur. He launched companies, he closed companies, he was bankrupt, and then he reinvented himself over and over again. My mother was also an entrepreneur. My brothers, my sister and my brother, they also are entrepreneurs. So I'm not sure if this is like a disease on my family, but we all end up being entrepreneurs. Although we know the ups and downs and good, bad, and ugly, uh, which I think not classify us as being too intelligent, because we know everything that comes with it, but we still end up being entrepreneurs. So my background helped, because I think it connects a lot to what I do today, and my mindset today. But I think what drove me more was my role models at home.
Which means that, as I understood, what inspired you to start your own business was you at the first time, and at the same time you have some genetics behind, which drives you to this entrepreneurship journey. Great. Tell me one other thing. How what inspired you to start your own business, DocDigitizer?
I was looking. So I spent the early days of my career as a software developer. Then I started to be a project manager and researcher in several European projects. Then I moved to Leia, that is a publishing group in Portugal, and I was the head of innovation there, launching products to the market. And at some point in my career, I decided to do an MBA. So I did an MBA, and at the middle of the MBA, I started to become more aware about entrepreneurship. I think, as most of the students that will be enrolled in this course. So that was my first formal, I would say, contact with entrepreneurship. And it was very curious to me to know more. I was very curious to know more about the space. So, and mostly because I was coming from very structured and very, I would say, traditional companies. And when people talked about entrepreneurship, it was like amazing. It was very sexy. Everything was very excited. So I was curious to know if that was in fact the case, because looking at the companies from my family, there were always ups and downs. So there was a mismatch between what people were selling entrepreneur was and what I was seeing back at home. So I decided to jump in and start to get my first feeling about what is opening a startup. So I joined two friends of mine, Joanna and Vasco, that were launching Sensei. That was pretty much one of the leading startups nowadays in Portugal, in autonomous shops. And that was the first contact. But then, after 1 or 2 years, I decided, no, now it's time to open my own venture, shape in my image and my values. And I was fortunate that I found Gonçalo, that is my co-founder. And we my main driver back then was to create a product that could be used tomorrow, not in 5 years, not in 10 years, not an amazing idea that the market is not there yet. I wanted to work on something that the market needed today, and it could be adopted today. Okay, so that is why we decided to focus on unstructured data and intelligent automation. Um, and we had that pain. I saw that pain over and over again on the companies that I was in, and it was like it was not an eureka moment, but it was very close to that. We just decided to address that problem, and we went from there.
Well, but based on that problem, what was your biggest challenge?
Um, I have challenge almost every day. So the
I can imagine.
yeah. So I think we tend to think that if we work, the challenge will be overcome. But as far as I know, they will just change in size. So we need to be comfortable in having challenge. It's very hard to pick the one that was hard, uh, but I think the any startup faces different challenge as 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 the company grow, or as the maturity of the company grow. So the first main challenge is, of course, to set up a founding team, and the first team members, and and create something. In some cases where when you don't have any contact with with the market, so we need to be very clever in building something, building the MVP, the minimum viable product, in a way it's useful to test in the market, because most entrepreneurs at that phase, they start to make assumptions and they start to develop something that they believe it's very suitable for the market. But if you spend a lot of time there, and if you don't have customers, you probably are developing something that will not fit. So that is the first challenge that you have when opening a company, is to get your first customers on board, and making sure that the effort that you are putting with your team, that will be very small at a time, that you are doing something that fits the market. And that, I think, was the first challenge we had. We started right away with customers, which is amazing, because they
Mhm.
have a lot of, you start to understand that it's not about the product, it's about how you uh, enable people to use your product. And this means sales, this means support, this means your customer journey, this means your documentation. And only at the end you have the technology, because the technology is the easiest part of the puzzle. um, and I see many entrepreneurs failing on early stage there. Not
It's
sure if
quite.
I answered your question.
Yeah, you answered quietly, uh, but it's nice to know. It's nice to know, and for me, it's quite important for you to have this drive to build a product for tomorrow, and not for the future, which most of the entrepreneurs are looking to projects which are mostly far fetched, and they want to be very highly disruptive, and in the end of the day, probably they are not aligned with the moment. And then another thing which is quite important also is that if you are driving and developing a product for tomorrow, what is important is to guarantee that you have customers on board, because you have to test your product, your minimal viable product, and also to guarantee that everything is in place in order to have that feedback loop, which after that is giving you the insights to develop even better the project. And this is indeed quite interesting and quite wise from my point of view. And this is a very important testimonial for all the students that we have here in entrepreneurship.
Well,
Okay, another question.
Ricardo, let me just add there that I think most of that mindset comes also from the investors, because
Yeah.
uh, they want you to be very ambitious on your idea. So I think people often mismatch what ambition is. They We can be very ambitious on our vision, and on our market, and what uh, we want to do as a company. But then there is tomorrow, and tomorrow you need to pay your employees, tomorrow you need to cover your expenses. So the vision is a journey, and although you might have this far-fetched idea that you want to pursue, you need to come up with a journey that tomorrow that makes sense for tomorrow and the day after, and that enable you to get funds to fund your vision. So this means sometimes to be very tactical uh, in the way you do your POCs with your customers, in your pilots, in the way you sell your first subscriptions, because the they are steps towards your vision. So don't become in love with your vision, because your vision is all only possible if you can create a path between today and the future. And this is more or less what I was talking about, because people often uh, because every investor say you need to be ambitious, you need to change the world. Yeah, but that takes 10 years, that takes 15 years. And so how can you manage the money and the people and the resources to get there? Is not,
Yeah,
you cannot be
yeah,
selling a
indeed.
dream
Yeah,
15 years.
yeah, indeed. In the end of the day, what the investors are looking for is your long-term vision, but at the same time, is quite a paradox, if you can say. But at the same time, what is important in the end of the day is to execute well. And
Exactly.
this is not only applicable to the startups, but mostly applicable to the startup. But indeed, is applicable to everything that we do in our working life. Is to how we can execute well, and execute fast in a way that we are gaining the resources and the conditions to be sustainable. And this indeed, and mostly today, when the money is not cheap as it was in the past, I believe that this is mostly important now than it was in the past. Yes, indeed, you're completely right. But let me ask you another question. In the end of the day, how you stay motivated and focused as an entrepreneur, because you have a lot of things to do. You have a team to manage. You have a responsibility about all the people that you have around you. You have your customers. You have your life too, your personal life, your friends and family. How you stay motivated and focused?
It's very hard, I would say, and I think it depends a lot from. I think it's very based on your personality and state of mind. So a couple of years ago when I started, I was very biased to look for motivation in things that I was very good at. So when you open a company, you start to be responsible for a set of areas, from the technology to the sales to the marketing to the financial parts of things. So you start to realize that the company is much more than just an idea. And when you look at this big puzzle of areas, you realize that you are not good at everything. So and more than that, you are in love with some of the pieces and you hate the other ones. So the first temptation to get motivated is just to look at the pieces that you like and that you are at and that you are good at. So that gives you comfortable. That makes you comfortable in a life that is very demanding and overwhelmed. That is very short-sighted, and it's a strong bias, and it will not help you, because if you are motivated just ignoring part of the company that you don't want to touch, uh, you will be in a mess. So I
Yeah.
realized that a couple of months after starting the company. So you need, as an entrepreneur, you need to touch every day in things that you are not good at, that you hate doing, and you lose time to focus on the things that you love. So if you cannot focus on the things that you love, how can you be motivated? So I understood that most of the motivation needs to come from the journey itself, not from the end results, not from the milestones that you reach, because you can be in love with the milestone, but once you reach that milestone, you just realize that there are two or three or four more milestones ahead. So
Yeah.
you cannot even celebrate that much, because you are always knowing what you don't know. So the milestone itself will not drive your motivation. You need to be passionate about the journey, to discover the unknowns, to get more into areas that you don't like, and try to understand how can you like them. How can you be good at finance? How can you be good at selling? How to learn more about marketing? So to develop competences in areas where you don't have any background, any formal background. So my main motivation comes exactly from that, to untap these areas where I am not good at, trying to find passion on those areas, and understanding that this is a journey, so we need to be passionate about the journey, not exactly passionate about the milestones itself, because they are very short-sighted. Once we reach a milestone, we will have just 10 ahead, so we don't have time even to celebrate them.
Yeah, you're right, indeed, because the milestones are execution, and it's good to celebrate, but we have a lot of another milestones which are ahead of us, and we have to accomplish them too. Indeed, I understand you quite well. What is important is to is to enjoy the journey, bring the most as the journey can bring to you, and also to try to learn everything which is necessary to uh, put the company and put the project in the right path according to the vision that you have for long term. Yes, indeed, you're completely right. Okay, about Doc Digitizer. Give me a brief about DocDigitizer and what is their unique, what it makes unique for your customers.
Okay, so I always like to describe DocDigitizer based on the problem it solves. So I think this is also something that people need to do, because often they describe it's an AI platform marketplace. So no, we exist just because um, humans exchange unstructured data. So, what is unstructured data? Is basically an email, a document, an image, a video, something that we can look at and understand as humans, but a machine cannot do the same. So, we are exchanging something in a language that is not understandable for our software systems. So, companies, most of the process within a company, they are supported in software and they depend on data. 80% of the data companies receive are pieces of information that are unstructured. So they have a gap here. They have an efficiency gap here. They need information, they need data, but this data is received in a format that they cannot digest, they cannot process. So they deploy people over and over again to transform this unstructured data and input this data into their systems as structured data. Uh, this is exactly what we do on our mailbox. So each time we open a mailbox and we see 100 emails, we like we are overwhelmed, and then we start to archive or move it to folders or reply, because the inbox will not is not able to do this automatically. So this is the problem of unstructured data. So and it applies to every single industry. It applies to us as individuals, it applies to companies. So DocDigitizer is an automation enabler that allows companies to convert unstructured data into structured data with 100% accuracy, which means that we are able to allow them to do this process automatically, reduce their costs, reduce their lead times, and enable them to streamline these processes and remove this efficiency gap on preparing data to be streamlined to their processes. So uh, one I can give you one or two examples of this is when you ask for a loan in a bank, and the bank requests you to send you a lot of documents about your income, your address, your identity, and they need to process that to approve the loan. Now, so this is a very standard process that as an input has unstructured data. So we enable the bank to uh, collapse this time and decide in a couple of minutes. Another example are, for example, legal contracts in a company that needs, so you have hundreds, thousands of legal contracts, and you need to index them to be sure that you are compliant, that you are renewing your contracts and in the dates where the contract needs to be renewed. Once again, you need extract data from these documents to make sure that all the process from that point on are automatically. So this is intelligent automation. This is something that companies are investing a lot nowadays to become more efficient. And we are an enabler to allow companies to do that faster, and with a high reliability, which is very important because if you don't have good data, uh, and if you just streamline garbage, it's garbage in, garbage out. So
Yeah, indeed. Indeed, which means that in the end of the day, uh, considering what we considering nowadays in the future, the number of the percentage of the data which is unstructured is even higher each day. And the end of the day, you provide ways to for companies, because you are on the business to business side, for companies to transform unstructured data in actionable data, which means take action with that data, which is 100% valid and validated by your intelligent machine and also by human in the loop, which is necessary to guarantee, at least today, to guarantee that we have the actionable data in order to take the better decisions, to automate the process, irrespective if you are in the banking sector, if you are on the health sector, communications, or other kind of sectors, or legal, or others that we can.
yeah,
It's amazing how you do it, because indeed, as I know, you do it very, very, very simple, in a simple way, in a market which nowadays we're using APIs for everything. Perfect.
exactly, exactly.
Okay,
And
let's move to.
no,
Please go on.
I was just adding that uh, people tend to ignore a lot this problem because they misunderstand what is structured data. And for the students that are hearing this, uh, having everything in a digital format is not really having data that is prepared to be handled. So as you open a chatbot, as you open I don't know, a new app to communicate with your customers, you start to receive more and more data, as text, as comments, as conversations, as
Yeah,
images, and all of this wide range of information, which is very good for a company. It's delivered to the company in a format that they cannot really make any decision. So this is a problem that is doubling in size every 2 years, according to Gartner, because companies are simply opening new communication channels with their customers, and as they open these communication channels, they receive information in a different format, and
yeah,
they it's overwhelming in some cases, the amount of information that they are just throwing away because they cannot process it.
yeah. You're right. You're right, and mostly because all of us as a companies, and all the companies in the world, they are trying to be as much frictionless as possible, and to reduce friction, you use a lot of tools which are based on unstructured data, and that's why your business and your purpose is quite important and very relevant nowadays and in the future. Thank you. Thanks a lot for being for doing this. Okay, let's move to another question, which I believe it will be quite important for our students. Is how you fund your company, and what was your progress on funding, and what are the pains on that?
Okay, so things nowadays are quite different from what they used to be in terms
Yeah,
of venture capital and business angels and funding. So I would say that um, 2 or 3 years ago, you could very easily find money to fund your idea with sometimes even with a PowerPoint,
yeah,
because if the the investor liked you, they would just throw a couple of hundreds of euros just to see if the idea uh, was worthwhile or not. Nowadays is much harder. It's much harder because most of the funds that had that investment strategy for quite some time, they are now faced with a problem on their portfolios. So they have a lot of companies that are not cash flow positive, and instead of investing in new companies, they are somehow routing their investment, their money towards their own portfolio to sustain those companies. And this will, I think, uh, be like this for the next years, due to the context, but also because I think they realize that the path that they were taking for investment is not really sustainable, and the amount of money thrown to companies that will not go anywhere, will not cannot be a long-term strategy. So this means in practice that things are much more hard to do nowadays. Funds are much hard to get, but they are not impossible. Okay, and in particular in early stage stages, I think there are still a lot of money there to be invested. The hardest part is how to, if we don't have anything, if we don't have almost a product, how can we get the money? I would say that the first, when we start a company in our early stage, we tend to think that the investors would love to see the product, but they in fact are not very worried about the product. They are very focused on you, on your team, on your vision, on your execution capability. um, and so I think my advice is to focus more on PowerPoint rather than on the product, because the product will come with time and with the investment. But the idea to have a very structured idea about the market, about the product, about your journey to the next stage of your venture. How can you get the first customers? How can you what are your first customers? What is the price? What is the business model? So I think that is much more important on an early stage than rather than having some demo or some video. Okay, and here I see a lot of mismatch in early stage entrepreneurs, because they love the product, so they just want everybody around them to love also the product, but the investors want something, want a business. The second piece of advice that I can give is focus. You need to generate money, and this is a change over the last years. These startups need to generate money. um, they cannot be an idea, a crazy idea, very sexy, mixing every trend available into a single marketplace or something. They
yeah,
need to generate money. This needs to be a cash positive um, business at some point, and this point cannot be the Series C or the Series D or the Series X. They need to generate money or as soon as possible. So if you are raising like a pre-seed or a seed fund or a Series A fund, um, you need to generate money probably. And this 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 cash flow metric is more and more present in the discussions with the investors. So I think by now, even if you are a very early stage, you need to have a very clear path to cash as soon as possible. And so focus on the idea, focus on the execution, and showcasing the execution and showcasing how good you are on areas beyond the technology, and then having this clear path to money. I think that would help you raising very easily the first euros that you need to start executing. And you need to focus on also the runway, because raising money and just burning money doesn't cut
Indeed,
anymore.
indeed, it was. I believe in the past, for most of the projects were measured by, mostly of the ones which are business to consumer, was measured by the number of active users or the adoption, we can say, and how much fast was the adoption, how much money the investors were putting in, and they were not worried about how 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 was your rate of burning cash, and how was your how fast you were generating cash. This was not a problem because indeed the cash was very cheap. Now that you have to, now that investors has to put a high premium based on inflation from one side, based on risk from another side, they are really more tight on how they evaluate, not in the not in the first beginning, on an early stage, as you mentioned, and you're completely right from my point of view too. But indeed, they need, now they are looking to how you are burning the cash, and how, and what is your rate. I remember that I was listening to a podcast which were based on several investors, and what they were saying to their startups was, you need to have cash at least until the first quarter of 2025. If you don't have cash until that, okay, we have to do something different on that. That's why, which is at the same time quite interesting, that most of the money now is going to business um, projects rather to business to consumer, because business to business has a drive on generating cash at least from the first beginning, even knowing that the number of clients are not so bigger, or not so big as it can be when you are on business to consumer. But in the end of the day, you don't have to be so concerned about network effects, for example, and you can generate cash at least from the first beginning, because you have to validate your product on the market, and validating, you can validate one or two customers. Indeed, you're completely right.
Ricardo, let me just add something on that, because I think that this is also a very common pitfall on entrepreneurs. Uh, when we look at our adoption, even as a B2B platform, there is like the sales cycle, and then the adoption cycle. So we often are afraid to sell because we are afraid of customers accepting and converting, because we don't have anything. So many entrepreneurs, they run away from selling on the early stage because they feel they are not ready to deliver. The thing is, when you look at the B2B, most sales cycles are 9 months. So
Yeah,
you are not selling what you have today. You are selling what you will have in 9 months. So if
exactly.
you just wait to be prepared, this means that you will wait 9 months and then more 9 months, so the customer adopts the product. So it's crazy, because you need to start selling today with the PowerPoint, with the vision. They will spend a lot of time reviewing that, and you have the contract, and you have the procurement, and you have to convince several stakeholders, and you close your eyes, and when you open them, you are 9 months ahead, and then you start the adoption, which means that probably they will not adopt right away. They still will have an implementation cycle. So don't be afraid of start selling, because you don't need the product to be ready to start selling, because you have a huge delay there on the sales cycle. So this is also something that you need to realize, that there's a sales cycle, a process through which your customer will review your product, not using it, but from a requirement point of view and from a contractual point of view. And only after months you are able, if everything runs according to plan, you are able to deliver. So you are always selling something that you don't have, in a way. So don't be afraid of selling, because sometimes you are even selling an idea, and they will buy it and help you to get funds to build your product. So you will build your product upon the opportunities that these first customers will give you and pay you. And you don't need to be worried about not being ready. So they be transparent with them. They are buying from an early stage startup, so they should know the risks. They are not expecting to you to be Microsoft, but this also is a way for them to experiment and do some innovations. So it's a win-win. You are doing a joint innovation, and this often takes a lot of time just to start. So start with the PowerPoint, start selling, start getting feedback on the requirements that they bring, and you will have time and money to develop the product along the way.
Yeah, indeed. What you're saying is that you are highly motivated based on the push from the market that you initiated, and you are also highly motivated to execute based on a promise that you made to that potential customer or that prospect, which in time you are going to deliver probably even better than you described in the first moment when you are showing them the way that they will benefit and the way they will create ways to improve their business, which is amazing. Okay, I don't have further questions. It was a great journey. Thank you, João, for this amazing interview. I believe that our students will appreciate a lot all the content that we generated here today on this discussion. It will be highly relevant for them on their journey on entrepreneurship 2023 in Nova FCT. And many thanks, João, for the time that you were available for being here. More than a great entrepreneur that you are also my great friend, and I really, really, really appreciate your time that you're having to have been here. Thank you, João.
Likewise, Ricardo, it was a pleasure. I hope I can. Many of the students may be successful entrepreneurs in the future. Um, Please reach out to me if you want some mentoring, or if you have questions. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You can very easily find me. Just drop me a message, and I'll be glad to meet you, and try to help you, because I think we win a lot helping each other along the way. And I was fortunate to meet amazing entrepreneurs in later stages of the company that helped me when I was struggling in the early stage. So this is something that is very important in entrepreneurs, because the problems are almost the same. We can shift the product, we can shift the industry, but the problems are mostly the same. So having a word with people that are a few months or a few years ahead of us, it's always refreshing. So feel free to reach me out on LinkedIn. And Ricardo, always a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, João.